How's it going? My name's James. Welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be looking at Robin Hobb's Ship of Magic, the first book in the Live Ship Traders trilogy, which is the next series in the realm of the Elderlings after the Farseer trilogy. It's taken me a while to decide to finally get around to this, and I have no idea why. If you know me at all, you know that I basically just spend my time raving about the Farseer trilogy, Royal Assassin being probably my favorite book right now. And after I finished Assassin's Quest, about this time last year, I think it was May or June of last year that I finished Assassin's Quest, I kind of took a break from the realm of the Elderlings, and I really think that was about the time that I started prioritizing Sun Eater and shifted into Sun Eater mode and finished all of that series, or caught up on that series anyway, last year. But I noticed in the Grimoire Discord that Matt on Books was kind of leading a read-along, and that there were a bunch of people who were kind of picking up the series and talking about it, and I thought that I would just hop in whenever they got to Ship of Magic, and that was this last month, and so I decided to jump in. I am so glad that I did. Hobb is one of those authors that I really feel like can just be so comforting and cozy to read, and at the same time just absolutely eviscerate your emotions. Ship of Magic, if you don't know what it's about, is about a merchant family that lives in the city of Bingtown, which is on the Cursed Shores. It's in Trader Bay, just south of the Six Duchies. It's actually, if you have a copy of Assassin's Apprentice or any of those, you can actually see where Bingtown is. I think it might even be mentioned in the original trilogy. I don't remember off the top of my head, but it sits in a region just to the south, and so it doesn't actually take place in the Six Duchies. We're going full Steven Erikson here. We're going to a completely different part of the continent and looking at totally different characters. And these trader families have access to live ships. Live ships are basically sentient ships that can speak, they can help the crew sail the ship. Basically, they can do things to assist the crew, let them know that cargo is packed improperly, all kinds of things, like every live ship. And the thing that's cool about the live ships is each one has their own personality, and so we follow specifically the Vestrit family, which is an old trading family who is just about to commiserate the quickening of their live ship, which is basically where their live ship becomes sentient. I forgot what it's called at the front, like the carved, it'll come to me later. Basically, it'll come alive, it'll talk, it'll have a relationship. It's a very important time. And kind of I hesitate to say main character, the predominant character that we follow through that is Althea Vestrit, who is the youngest daughter of Ephraim and Ronica Vestrit, who are kind of the matriarch and patriarch of the family. And Ephraim, at the beginning of the story, is dying. His death plays a very important role in not only who will become the next captain of the Vivacia, which is the name of the live ship, but also will serve to quicken the live ship, which I think is just such a cool piece of world building that, you know, these families literally have to die for their ships to come alive, which is so interesting and morbid, but also just, she writes it so well. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I don't want to dwell in what I think is a really powerful moment in the book. But ultimately, Althea feels strongly that she should be the one to captain the ship, to take the ship over. Ultimately, she is passed up, and it's given instead to her brother-in-law, Kyle. Kyle takes over, and Althea is actually removed from the ship. But one of the unique things about live ships is that they require a blood relative of the family on them. So Kyle is not a blood relative. He's not a trader family. He doesn't understand live ships. Kyle is married to Kefria, who is Althea's older sister. And he decides that he's going to bring his son Wintro onto the ship. Wintro had been surrendered to the priesthood of Sa, which is a religious order that his mother felt very strongly he should be sent to. I think that there was some kind of deal or arrangement or something that the firstborn son, or I don't know, there was something in there about why he was sent. But Wintro loves his life as a priest, and he assumes that he's being brought back just to mourn the death of his grandfather. Kyle decides that Wintro is going to stay on board the ship to serve as the blood relative that the Vivacia needs. Really, that's kind of the core conflict there, is between the inner workings as this power dynamic shifts in this trader family, But we also have a few other plots that are going on. We have another live ship that has kind of a dark and mysterious past named Paragon, and he's kind of beached and left, not to die because they don't really die, but just left isolated. He kind of has his own unique thing going on. We follow a group of pirates, specifically one pirate in particular, Captain Kennett, as he seeks to unite the pirate islands and become the first pirate king. And it's very One Piece, if you've ever watched that anime or that manga. And then we're also given the perspective of Brashen, who was the first mate under Ephron Vestrit, served on the Vivacia under Ephron. And as the power dynamic shifts, Kyle kind of replaces Brashen with somebody else, replaces him with his own guy, kicks Brashen off the ship. And Brashen and Althea kind of find themselves pushed together through fate or destiny or plot convenience or whatever you want to call it. And they kind of have their own little side adventure as Althea tries to figure out how she's going to get her ship back. Then we're also given the perspective of the Vivacia herself, which is an interesting choice, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later because it kind of plays into the magic and how Robin Hobb uses magic systems that I think is really unique to her as an author. And then the last perspective that I remember that I wanted to talk about was that of the serpents. The serpents, they're literally sea serpents, and they're sentient, and they think and they talk to each other anyway, and I don't understand them. I finished the book. I have no idea what's going on with them. I just thought, you know, that is a perspective that we get and they're in there. And is unique, is very unique. I want to talk about the magic for a little bit. I'm not going to go super deep into it because really I don't understand everything that's happening yet, but I thought it was just so cool that the two magic systems, if you want to call them, the two types of magic that we saw used in Farseer, at least so far, are really not present in this series. But what is cool is that the magic that is present follows a similar thread or follows a similar kind of theme to the skill and the wit. One of the things that I love about Hobb's magic is that a lot of it revolves around connections, be it connections between people and animals. In this case, it's a connection or a bond between people and ships. And it sounds kind of goofy whenever you first say it out loud, but she does it in a way that provides an avenue for discussions of what does it mean to be human? What does it mean to have a soul? Particularly Wintro and the Vivacia's relationship was one of my favorites to follow in the whole book because it facilitated a lot of these conversations where Wintro, being a religious believer of the deity Sa, the god Sa, which we didn't really learn a lot about Sa himself itself, but we learned a lot about the lifestyle that being a priest of Sa requires of Wintro. His dependence on the contradictions of Sa, which I thought was a really interesting approach to religious texts or religious literature. Obviously, religion serves as a means not just for faith and belief, but also for us to understand the world around us and provide worldview. And sentient sailing ship that's been technically alive for a long time, but recently able to express those feelings probably has a lot of figuring out to do. And the conversations between the Vivacia and Wintro provided some of my favorite dialogue that I've ever read from Hobb, just on the general discussions of what does it mean to be a human? What does it mean to have a soul? What is the origin of the world that we're living in? Like I said, it sounds kind of goofy that they are having these deep conversations as a person and as a ship, but that is what makes Hobb's magic so great. Editor James chiming in here to say that I completely forgot to talk about one of my other favorite aspects of Hobb's magic, and that is how she uses it to play with perspective in her stories. So in Farseer, we saw the skill and the wit provide a way for her to show other perspectives other than Fitz without really leaving Fitz's perspective. And she does a similar thing in Live Ship with conversations that are had within the ship itself. So these ships can kind of feel the emotions and the feelings of the crew and the people who are on them while they're having these conversations, and just anybody who's on the crew in general. Every once in a while, Hobb will have a conversation take place on a live ship but we're taking the perspective of the ship. So it's kind of like we're getting to see both people's perspectives or both people's emotions, or through the ship we kind of get to feel what both of the people in the conversation are feeling. And it's just really unique and really cool. And so just wanted to chime in and say that perspective is another way that Hobb kind of uses her magic to stand out from other authors that I've read. In an interview that I watched with Robin Hobb one time, she talked about how if you can make people believe that you know what you're talking about whenever it comes to horses, then they'll believe you that you know what you're talking about when you talk about dragons or you talk about mystical entities or things like that.
And whenever you write fantasy, you want to do your best to lower the threshold of disbelief as much as you can. So any way that you can lower it, you do, whether it's saying this is going to be a male point of view, so I'm going to have a name that might be male, to making sure that all of your facts about horses are absolutely correct, so that when you introduce a dragon, you have the trust of the reader, and the reader who believes you know about horses will now believe that you know about dragons.
The logic there kind of carries over into this series too. Hobb really did, it seems like, her research, or she has been sailing before, or she has extensive knowledge of what it is like to sail, and she conveys the differences between what it's like to be on board a dead ship or just a regular sailing ship so well that whenever you're on the Vivacia or you're on another live ship, they feel different. And you believe her and you trust her. And not only that these live ships help them sail and that they don't just serve a logistical purpose in the world where trading and sailing and all of that stuff is easier for the families, which it is, but they also have personalities. And I don't know if we got to the heart of whether or not they think that they have souls or not, but they have these conversations and they have these relationships and these bonds. And these bonds are quickly becoming my favorite thing about Hobb's magic across her series, is that everything that Hobb writes is so relational, whether it's her magic, her characters, even the setting and how the different families relate to each other and the people outside of the families. There's kind of a subplot in the book of people who aren't trader families moving into Bingtown and kind of taking the place over and making it look different and bringing in slavery and things that are really kind of hard topics and involve a lot of change, heavy themes of family and slavery and power dynamics and, religion and the origin of life and what does it mean to have a soul. And she really just captures all of that so well in this book, to the point that it's just masterfully done. It's just coming to be what I expect whenever I pick up a Robin Hobb novel. I just expect the prose to be beautiful, the character work to be incredible. None of the characters that I can remember stay the same from the beginning to the end of the novel. Every single character undergoes some sort of change, which is a feat in and of itself. But on top of that, she's giving us wonderful world building, an incredible plot. I can't recommend it enough. I could just sit here and gush and gush and gush, and I feel like at some point I'm gonna just want to start talking about spoilers, and I don't want this to be a spoiler video, even though some of what I've already said might be considered minor spoilers. I tried to keep everything that I talked about in this one pretty early in the book. I mean, within the first 150 pages or so, which in a book that's 809 pages, first 150 pages or so is still very early in the book. I'm just so excited to be reading Robin Hobb again. I absolutely loved this book. I think that if I had to give it any kind of criticisms, is that it definitely does feel slow in the middle. I found pretty much every aspect of this book compelling, and so I was never bored. But Robin Hobb takes her time. I mean, she doesn't feel the need to skip through the plot really, really quick, to just skip to the action. I mean, what she's doing here is exploring relationships and exploring bonds and showing this character development. I think I mentioned it in my Assassin's Apprentice review. She gives us the mundane moments with these people just as much as she gives us the exciting and life-altering moments that normally make up kind of the structure of a book, is it seems to be like one major moment after another, one major conversation after the other. But she really finds the importance and the value in the mundane, that, not every huge life-changing moment is some fantastical event, but it could just be a really good conversation with a friend or a really hard conversation with someone you don't like very much. She's just masterful at writing that kind of story, and I'm excited to see where all of our characters end up in the next book. The pirate plot, the trader plot, the stuff that's going with the serpents, there's stuff going with the live ships. Everything ended in a satisfying way for this book, but it is very much a first book. I could definitely feel things were set up to continue the series, and that pretty much means that I can't even really begin to guess where some of this stuff is happening. I mean, the end of the book surprised me with how it ended. I kind of started seeing the pieces coming together towards the end about where things might end up, at least for this book, and she did that really well. Yeah, I'm just excited to get into Mad Ship. I've got some books that I need to finish before I can justify moving on to it, but this has definitely become Live Ship Traders, and really the Realm of the Elderlings as a whole have become priority series for me this year. I really, if I don't finish it, I want to get close, so that maybe early next year I'm wrapping up The Fitz and the Fool, and we'll have finished the Realm of the Elderlings, and that's really exciting. And so no more super long breaks from Robin Hobb. I think that this is gonna inject me straight into the long haul, finishing the Realm of the Elderlings, and I'm really excited for it. So if you stuck around this long, thank you. Appreciate you watching. Be sure to click the like and subscribe buttons down below. It really helps me out. And let me know if you have read Ship of Magic or other nautical stories. I don't really read a lot of, like I said, pirate fantasy or anything like that. It's not normally my thing, but I really enjoyed this book. And I'm curious to know if there's anything else out there like this nautical piratey romp. That's not what this is at all. So yeah, I think that's all I got, and I'll catch you in the next one.